My name's Alison, the online piano and the online violin tutor. Today is going to be a tutorial on grade 1 scales. So I've taken these scales from the ABRSM, or the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music grade 1 violin syllabus, and this is from the book I'm looking at, or the syllabus that I'm looking at is 2012 to 2015. And to be perfectly honest with you, these scales really don't change much from year to year. The pieces in the book always do, but the scales pretty much always stay the same normally. If they do, they maybe make 1 or 2 changes throughout the whole syllabus, through the whole grades. So the good news is that you don't really have to worry about the scales too much, because they've always been the same as long as I've known them. So in the syllabus I'm looking at D major scale 1 octave, that you've got to do A major scale 1 octave, a G major scale 2 octaves, and an E natural minor scale 1 octave. I'm going to go into that, the E natural minor scale in just a second. You've also got to do the same in arpeggio, so D major arpeggio, A major arpeggio, G major arpeggio, which is 2 octaves, and the E natural minor arpeggio as well. So I'm going to start with the scales, and what I've written out for you, again, which I will put onto PDF format and have it so that you can print it out and things, and that'll be scrolling up on the screen. So I've just done this for you. I don't know if it's too clear on the camera, but if you print this out first, then we can have a look at it and go through it together, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll perhaps do some close-ups of my fingers doing the scales as well so you can see them. But first on the list, I'm going to start with D major. I'm going to do these slurred bows as well as separate, but I'll just start with separate to start with. So you've got a D major scale that you're going to be starting on the open D string, and you're going to be going up to 3rd finger on the A string. So it's going to look and sound like this. So the open strings are going to be the open strings. The first fingers are going to go where the first fingers normally go. So if you've just recently had a dot or a line or a sticker of some such where the first finger should go on your violin, then that's where the first finger is going to go. If you haven't, then it's just in the regular, normal bog standard place you'd put your first finger. The 3rd fingers are all going to go where they should go, so that will be on the 3rd finger dot or line or wherever you have normally been playing it. Now the 2nd fingers are the only fingers that really have 2 options of where they can be. So they can be either very jammed in, very close to the 2nd finger, or stretched and very close to the 3rd finger, never in the middle, remember. So either right next door to the 1st finger or jammed up right next door to the 3rd finger. So I've marked this in for you. So when you come to doing the F sharp, that's the 2nd finger, so that's going to be stretched. And when you come to do the C sharp on the A string, that's going to be stretched as well. I've also put on this bit of paper here, stretched and back, so that will be symbolised by an S and a B. And if you can see in the scales that I've put an S and an S here as well, and that obviously means stretched. And if it's stretched, it means closer to you. So, other words, stretched, closer to you, so that would mean sitting right behind the 3rd finger. If you see a B for back, then it's going to be back closer to the pegs, and I've written that on the bit of paper as well for you. So that's the D major scale. I'm going to play a close-up again for you now. A little bit with the D major. I'm going to go on to A major scale now. A major is pretty much exactly the same as the D major scale, except you're starting on the A string, going up to the E string, and you're going back onto the A string again. So what I mean when I say it's exactly the same, the fingering is exactly the same. So the open strings are the open strings, the first fingers are where the first fingers normally go, the 3rd fingers are where they would normally go, and the 2nd fingers are stretched. So that's symbolised by the 2 S's that I've put there for you. So this is the A major scale. You can see that I really am jamming that 2nd finger right behind the 3rd finger. If If you follow the fingerings that I've put here, and whether it's going to be stretched or back and that sort of thing, then really these would be like, you know, like doing a maths paper or a mathematical equation. They're going to be right. If you just follow exactly what it says, then there's no reason why these scales should be wrong, as long as you're doing exactly what it says. So if it says it's stretched, it needs to be right up against the third finger. That third finger needs to be touching it. They need to be so close that they're touching each other. Yeah, not with a little gap behind it or anything like that. Rammed in, really close. And the same for the first and the second finger. I normally slide my second finger along the nail of my first finger so that then I know that they are actually touching. So even if you've got smaller fingers, they should still be touching. If you've got bigger fingers, they should still be touching. Whatever the point is I'm trying to make, those fingers must be touching, or they won't be out of tune. So assuming that your first finger is in the right place, which hopefully for you guys it should be by now, and the third finger is in the right place, then it should be easy to put in that second finger. So that's really important, that the second fingers must be touching, or else it won't be right. Another little tip that you can have with scales is that on the way down when I'm teaching, I find a lot of students tend to take their fingers away from the scale, which means away from the fingerboard, which means that you've got to find the fingers again on the way down. So what might be easier is if you sort of not kept your fingers on the strings, obviously, but maybe if you sort of hovered them over a little bit. So if you watch how I do it again. In actual fact, my fingers don't really move at all. All they do is that they're set into position with that third finger, with the second finger stretched to the third finger, and I've got a gap between the 1 and 2, and then they literally just lift off. They stay where they are, but they just lift off. My fingers didn't move, or I didn't have to reset them. So that should help a little bit as well. Also, I find as well on the way down, some students like to prepare all of their fingers in the right place. That's probably not a good idea because it wastes a lot of time and you don't need to do it. On the way down, all you need to do is just have your fingers ready to sort of go down in the right area. So you don't want to line up all your fingers here because it's taken me time to do that. And you won't be able to do that in an exam. So if you try and just hover your fingers above the strings rather than taking them all away, you might find that a little bit easier as well. Okay, I'm going to go on to the G major now. This is the beginning grade one. It's a 2-octave scale. So you're going to be starting on the open G string. Oh, the A major scale starts on the open A string. Sorry, I forgot to mention. So the G major starts on the open G string, and you're basically going to be playing all the fingers, obviously except fourth, on all the strings, all the way up to the top. Be careful when you get to the top that you're only going up to a second finger, which is going to give you a G. Do not put the third finger down. Third finger on the E string gives you an A. We're not doing the scale of A, we're doing the scale of G. So we need to start on G, we need to end on G, and then go all the way back down to G. So G, G, G. So that's why you must be careful to stop on the second finger when you get to the top, and don't be tempted to try and put that third finger down. So you've got 4 second fingers in here, 1 on every single string, and again it's just a case of remembering these scales. So I've put where the stretch are and where the backs are. So on the bottom 2 strings, G string and D string, your second finger is going to be stretched, and on the top 2 strings, A string and E string, your second finger is going to be back, which is packed in right next to your first finger. So I'm going to play the G major scale close up for you so you can see it. G major scale. So I'm going to move on to the E natural minor. Now, an E natural minor is a recent new addition to the grade 1 scales for the ABRSM. It never used to be there, but basically it's, without confusing everybody going into so much detail, a minor scale has a raised 7th note in it. So whatever the 7th note would be according to the key signature, you would then raise it, and that makes your minor scale. So the E natural minor scale is just an E minor scale but without the raised 7th. So it gets really complicated. I'm trying not to confuse everybody. I would just suggest that you either just have a look at the scale book, buy a scale book. They're not very much money to buy, a few pounds or something like that. And just have a look at the notes written in there, or you can just follow the sheet that I've written out for you guys as well, and that will help you through it. But it's basically just a minor scale without the raised seventh as you normally would do. In grade 2 onwards, you'll just get the normal minor scale. So if you guys have a little bit more of a musical knowledge, you'll probably know what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to play the E natural minor scale for you. I'm just going to do a close-up of that so you can see that straight away. With the first finger on the D string, and what you'll notice as well is that the top note, which is an E, I've actually put down as a 4. I really do highly recommend putting down that fourth finger instead of using an open E. You can use an open E, but you know, I know what you guys are like. You're at the very start of learning the violin, nobody likes to put their fourth finger down because it's got to be stretched, you're not used to it. It is a very weak finger of the hand, you know, I will admit that. But it does take some practice to do, and you've got to get used to it. So you might as well, because coming up to grade 2 and onwards, you're going to have to use more fourth finger anyway, so no time like the present. So try and do that fourth finger. Just remember to give it a good old stretch. Stretch the fourth finger, stretch it a little bit more, and then you're probably going to be just about right. So do use that fourth finger. If you really can't use the fourth finger and it's just sounding so horrendous that it's ridiculous, only then use the open E, especially if you're going to go in for an exam, because it's better that it is actually accurate than trying to struggle and use the fourth finger because you know it's good for you to do, but it isn't sounding accurate. So only in extreme circumstances use that open E, but it's better to use a fourth finger, and it keeps everything on the same string as well. So I'm going to go through the slurred bowings for these as well. I have written in my little way, sorry, the paper fell off. I have written the up and the down bows. Now, technically you wouldn't do 2 ups, 2 downs, but I've just written that so that you guys can understand, because I thought if I just wrote in the slurs, I don't think you're sort of going to understand it. So how I break it down for my students and how I teach it to them is just by separating out the bows. So if you follow the bowing, do it this way first. This isn't the right way, but I'm breaking it down into steps. So I'm just going to do the D major scale as an example. So you wouldn't actually want to separate the 2 bows, but sometimes it just makes it easier to understand and to get the bowing aspect in your head, because slurred bowing, especially for someone who is trying to tackle a grade 1, can be quite difficult to do. So after you've mastered that, the next stage would be to get rid of those gaps in between the up bows and the down bows totally, so then it would make it really smooth. So you still got to follow the same bowing. So the open D is on a down bow, the E is on an up bow, the F sharp is on an up bow, the G is on a down bow, the A is on a, and so on. But just don't have the gap that we put in with the bow. So now try and bridge that gap. So you should have something that's like this. I also find that students find it really difficult to do a down bow following from the 3rd finger for G going onto the open A string. It's almost natural that you want to change direction of the bow, but you can't. But you know, again, it's all practice, and once you get your head around that, you know, it's like anything, you'll get it. So the A major is exactly the same. The G major is exactly the same, except it's just a little bit longer. So if I did that for you so you can have a look. Okay, and the E natural minor is exactly the same for that one as well. So I'm going to go on to arpeggios now. Now arpeggios are just sort of shortened versions of scales where we just miss out 1 or 2 notes. They're made up of the 1st, 3rd and 5th note of every scale. So you could literally take the 3rd, 1st and 5th note of every single scale you've got, and that would be an arpeggio. Don't forget you'd need the name of the arpeggio at the top as well. So A major arpeggio would be A, C sharp, E, and of course you need A at the top as well to finish it off, and you'd repeat those backwards. The fingering would be exactly the same as what you've taken from the scales, nothing changes. Like I said, you're just missing, think of it as a scale, but you're just missing out 1 or 2 notes. So I'm going to do A major arpeggio for you. These are all separate bows, by the way. And D major. And G major. And E natural minor. So again, for the E natural minor, it's much easier for you to do a 4th finger there. So with the G arpeggio, students find it a little bit difficult when they get to the higher strings for some reason. I think it's because you're doing lots of 3s and 1s, and then you're cramming in a 2. But the best thing to do is just to practice the whole thing slowly. So if you notice, I wasn't really taking my fingers off there at all. I'm going to do that one more time for you zoomed in so you can have a good old look at that. So I think it's actually trying to keep that 3rd finger down on the A string that's the problem. If you take that off to put the 2nd finger on at the top and then try and put that 3rd finger back again, I think that's where you might be having a few issues. So there are your grade 1 scales and arpeggios. I really hope that this was helpful for some of you out there that are trying to do the scales, trying to fathom them out, trying to get them a little bit more accurate, or maybe you're just trying to have a go at yourself. These are really, really, really good exercises to do. Just, you know, even if you're not doing scales, they're really, really good to do because they really do help you have much better knowledge of where your fingers need to go on the fingerboard, and also when you're doing certain pieces of music as well. So they're really good techniques for the fingering, because some people have said to me that they're not sure if their fingers are that dexterous enough. What exercises can they do? Well, these scales and arpeggios are the best exercises to do, because every single piece of music in history ever written is made up of scales, arpeggios and a few other technical things as well that I'll go on to later. So you will discover a scale and arpeggio almost every single piece that you play. So if you're really good at doing your technical stuff, i.e. scales and arpeggios, then it makes pieces so much easier, and especially that is true on the violin. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you like my videos. Have a look around my channel. I've got loads of videos on there. I've also got an app that you can download me on, so you know, if you're out and about shopping in the supermarket, you can have a look at one of my lessons there. I don't know, just randomly, just for fun, whatever. And check out my other videos, and I'll catch you all next time. Thanks. Thank you.